on things very nice, be nice for your tape. I normally don't play a third at all, but I really can't stand pretty thirds.
Spoken like a true theorist. Someone who's thought a lot about these things. Good. Well, so I'm gonna confine myself to general thoughts about the piece because of the limitations of time that we have, but we know that there are different feelings about Busoni's work. It may be a different sensibility from ours in many ways, but I think there's a lot of value to it. One of the salient factors is that in his time, the musical culture was fascinated and in love with the piano itself, the sonority of the piano. Busoni was primarily a great pianist, I think, and a great thinker about the piano. He was also a composer. He was also a great devotee of Bach, hence, these massive, titanic, wonderful arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
But he essentially turned, one of the high points of all violin literature into a solo piano piece. That's what he meant to do. It's less an arrangement than perhaps a commentary on Busoni's part, in my opinion, on the piece. So a couple of musical things. Two things that struck me. First off is that I think it's essentially a theme in variations, and part of the charm comes from the unity of that in terms of tempo. So I did sense a little bit, in my opinion, too much variation in that regard. If I were preparing this piece for a performance, I would pare it back and really play it very clearly, dryly, minimal pedal, and make sure that the whole thing hangs together in terms of tempo. I would use the metronome once or twice just to get a sense of what I'm doing, because there's so much going on in terms of technique and fingers and runs and everything that the basic pulse, it's so easy to just lose that a little bit here and there. Not that it has to be played like a metronome ultimately at all, because there are places where it simply can't be and it's not meant to be, but by and large the whole thing has to feel like one cohesive unity. So that would be my general recommendation, that in practicing this you really be strict with yourself for a few days, a week or something. That would be what I would do. But the other factor that struck me was I think we can get more variation in sonority by your use of the pedal and also by your general touch, as the organists say, more legato. I feel like more legato can come from your fingers and less relying on the pedal. The pedal is really for color and for changes of how the registers combine, different qualities of sound that you can get. So, why don't we start with a really difficultly fortissimo passage, namely the end. Mm-hmm. And let's just experiment with that and see what we can do in terms of getting a real quality legato sound, and definitely for this part, strength that comes from your feet on the pedal, but not working against yourself. It still has to be clear and beautiful piano sound, balanced. Just play the end. To the sounds between when you're striking the keys. After you play the chord, hang there a little bit and listen to the sonority before you go to the next one, and listen how the phrase is created over the course. It's a better gesture to me. It's more rhythmic and more powerful, but the pedal is working against us. It's not functioning. There's too much pedal. So let me try, if I may. 5, 4, and maybe even 3 for that. This is a special sonority. So try changing really when you get there. Okay, actually, so that one you don't need to change because the D is still part of it. So I would probably hold it, unless you're really passionate about that rest. But I think here it's just bonk, two. Hold it and not change until you get to beat one of the next measure. Play and change. Okay, of course it's complicated because you have these rolls, which makes it very, very difficult. But I would play probably, try to do it all together and then change because you can hold the notes. There they are. Change right after you play it. Try it like that. So clear it.
Yeah, so I can't get these. Definitely can't get those.
How are you playing it? What's your fingering for your left hand? Fine. So you can still gather. Change. Change here. Change and then play. I would try that. See what happens with it. Already better. That's nice. Change. You're still changing a little too early because you're catching the last one. You know, really, be bold with waiting longer to change the pedal. Clear it and then try it again. Change. And then change after the 16th note to clear for this giant B flat. Enormous sonority. I know it's marked pesante, so maybe not completely legato, but I feel like you can get a little bit more legato in those octaves just by the way you listen to the way you connect, not just da 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 da. On the violin, it would be, a great violinist. Just don't rush through this. It's pesante, enjoy it, listen to every sonority, and then go on. Good. Now, you may want to come to these. Try this. You may want to circle around to these Ds. I don't know what finger you're using, probably 3. Some people might use 1 or something else, but you may want to try this. So if I'm swinging around this way and up, rather than that's one way. This is another possibility. So try that and see if that is of interest to you. So you're actually coming down from underneath the circle. Wow. Clear before you start. I think it's an intriguing idea that you want to leave out the third. Just octaves, no fifth.
Yeah, that's
I see. idea. Let's take another passage. Maybe let's go to the quasi trombone. That marking always startled me. Where is it? Beautiful place. What does he mean by quasi trombone, I wonder?
Well, I don't know. I guess so. I have a problem because I feel that what he means by quasi-trombone is he wants something full and brassy. And we've just played forte or fortissimo for 2 pages, and everybody I have who listens to it says it's too much. So then we still don't clearly. If we're gonna play like trombone, I think I hear more. Trombones, I hear them in a jazz band. I don't hear no quiet trombones, but it's been, everybody who's listened to it has been said up to this point it's been overwhelming. It's all, there is no mezzo forte, there's no piano up to here.
Well, Busoni may have meant it to be overwhelming, so
I think so.
But
I think so.
My understanding is that the buffo quality of the trombone really came in the 20th century with the jazz band and became there was some kind of like flippant, joking quality about the trombone. But before that, trombones were a sacred music, had a sacred music connotation. Gabrielli used trombones. The Renaissance. You could imagine in San Marco, in Gabrielli's place, they would use trombones in maybe Vesper services or something where the sound needed to carry, but needed to be heard from the back. So maybe these are trombones that we're hearing from far away in the same, but there's this resonance. I agree completely that there's a resonance, but quasi-trombone all of a sudden means the sound quality will change somehow. How will it change? I think that can be based on your interpretation. He also marks dolce. So how can the trombone be dolce? It's a pretty funny question to me. But try feeling the key beneath your finger and really sinking your way into the key with a very padded finger and see what kind of sound. Good. Pause. This is one. How did you like it?
Yeah, I think it sounds better.
It's getting there. It's getting more compelling for me. So if you want it loud, maybe it can still be loud, but if it's rich and elastic, the other part of that is the pedal. Do you want kind of any gaps between the sound, or do you want a legato here?
I want gaps between the sound. I think most people don't want them, so I don't know. I do legato sometimes when I play for other people, but I don't really like it.
So, between the phrases you want little breaths. That makes sense. Why not? And trombonists would probably do that. In a very live space, however, there might be some sound that bleeds through, carries through, so you may want to take that. But as long as the gaps are, for me, the gaps should be breaths. Do you play trombone or any wind instrument?
I played trumpet.
You did? Okay, so you're intimately familiar with this. I mean...
Yeah, but I don't breathe at the piano. I just breathe at the trumpet.
Well, you must be breathing. I mean, you wouldn't be sitting here. But it's still, we're still singing. And maybe this is an excuse to breathe because quasi-trombone would play it as though we're singing. For a very rich sonority because you have the low D octave, and this is the overtone series, so it's naturally going to be very resonant. I would sink into that one. Then he starts a new phrase, right? Mm-hmm. Make sure there shouldn't be accents on the beginning of each phrase. It has to come, in my opinion, from the breath. sonorities. So here I'm feeling it more and more. And then when we get here, it's a similar sound, but there's more of it. There's more, bigger register. You have these huge, big 6 chords in the right hand, but beautiful tone. How do we get the beautiful tone? Let's try starting, in both cases, including here, let's just experiment with starting on the key, already on the key. Okay, I didn't separate as much. Rather than above the key. To me, it's too risky. Even for here, I wonder if we can start on the key. Under my fingers, but rather than starting above and then having to kind of worry about landing, try having your hand there, and then you just, there's more control. To me, it's like almost as though your fingers are there, and some pianists talk about squeezing it. There's a little bit of motion for this type of chord, but to me there's this sense of coming up. I already bring my hand there before I play it. You'll have more control. Try it. See if it is helpful. You can start there or the earlier place. Earlier place may be easier to try this again. In the back of your mind that there are constant gradations of dynamics. We have multiple voices here, at least 3 that I see, and maybe more. But piano is the maybe it's piano here or maybe it's forte, but it's constantly shifting. And I think it was probably like that in Bach's orchestra but it became more explicit in the Romantic time. I mean, there was just more of it, but even a solo violin playing this line is gonna shift it. As they go up the phrase, they'll change, and then they come down. So a little more dynamics, multidimensional dynamics. Just keep going from there and see what happens. You're supposed to have that wonderful dropping motion. Here's a place where you don't need to rush. These big rolled chords. I mean, you can probably broaden it a little. It's marked sostenuto, un poco pesante. You could do justice to those sonorities last time, and then we'll go on just a little bit more. It's wonderful to be able to put so much passion into